as promised, we're going to get to some SEC East teams. We got a lot of SEC East content to get to. But one SEC West item, Shane, to start with. Let's kick it on down to Ole Miss, where, man, Lane Kiffin has summed up how wild and crazy this transfer era truly is. I mean, this is something he's been kind of, he's in on the recruiting and the NIL.
Yeah.
They've been taking advantage of the transfer portal. And without even saying anything other, Shane, let's kick it over real quick to Lane Kiffin, who, again, sums up perfectly what this crazy, crazy transfer portal era is like that we're currently living in.
Lane, just a weekend of practices. Where would you guys say you guys are on schedule, behind schedule, above schedule, just kind of from where you want it to be through 6 practices?
I think we're probably close, to the variables being all the new guys, and so probably not where we'd want to be normally, but I do have to take that into consideration because, again, your new guys usually are at the bottom. You got a lot of new guys that have played a lot, and, we expect them to play, and that's why they're here. So that's a work in progress, and it's really both sides. As you guys being out there, you can look out there and see easily, half the guys out there going against each other, are portal guys. So, I thought about it in, a play today, and I'm like, that guy was just playing for Auburn, covering the guy that just played for Mississippi State. So it's just the world we're in.
So how about it, Shane? I mean, my goodness, we're talking the Ole Miss coach, and he's recognizing, well, that was an Auburn defensive back, Mississippi State receiver. And, you don't even know which Mississippi State receiver he's talking about because they've taken multiple of them. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You're gonna have to Google that, and you still don't know. So no, this is the age of college football, man. This is what we're. This ain't your papa's college football. You know what I'm saying? This is
right.
This is a new generation, and it is going to be a revolving door. Not just Ole Miss, but all these SEC teams. And this isn't the last time we talk about it. In fact, I think it gets a little bit more hairy as we go on.
Well, let me ask you this, Shane, because this is kind of where my mind goes. I know a lot of people, they hate the portal, they hate all these transfers, but to me it makes it exciting because we got no clue what LSU is going to be. We got no clue what Ole Miss is going to be, but they've added to their roster so many new pieces. It adds to the mystery. It adds to me what college football should be, the expectation, the excitement, and then we get to talk about it for 9 months and then see how right or wrong, mostly wrong, we are on the field. And it's not just Ole Miss and LSU. It's the entire SEC. I mean, you got a deficiency on your roster. You go to that portal, you can shore it up immediately when, let's say 5-10 years ago, Shane Beamer takes over that South Carolina job. You'd have to say, well, we got to give them 3, 4, 5 years before we know what that thing's like. They have high expectations, and they should year 2, and in large part because of all these great transfers they've added. And again, I think it's great for the excitement and just the uncertainty going into a season.
Yeah, and how do they do on your team? You know what I'm saying? How many times have we seen a transfer like Burrows or just maybe they weren't doing so great at a certain program, then they show up on your campus and all of a sudden they're the highlight, man. They're the NFL talent. How many times have you seen a quarterback or a wide receiver? I think of the cornerback that went up to Kentucky.
Right.
He comes out a first round draft pick, and does he do that if he stays with his current roster? I mean, that's the beautiful thing about transfers is you're going to find some of these diamonds in the rough, and they're going to shine on your team. And I think Ole Miss is going to have a handful of those that you may not have been talking about them last year, but at the end of the season, you're going to say, look what Lane did with this talent.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many guys you could point to like that, Shane. Jamison Williams, receiver, Alabama. Hendon Hooker, Tennessee. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So I cannot wait to see.
Maybe it's Max Johnson this year.
Right.
You know, maybe it may. You just never know who's going to emerge. Who was held back maybe with an offensive system or defensive coach, and then he's just kind of cut loose this year with a new ball club. That's the wonderful thing about transfers, man.
Yeah. Now, last thing about Ole Miss, Shane, Lane Kiffin talks the quarterback competition between Jackson Dart and Luke Altmaier. He doesn't reveal much here, but he does kind of say, well, hey, maybe we took Matt Corral for granted with his greatness last season and everything he was able to give that football team. But I thought more importantly, Shane, that the bigger question, that the second one, will recruiting rankings, transfer rankings, all this hype, will that play into the decision? And I think the reporter was maybe a little afraid to ask specifically, Shane, but I think what he's really trying to say is, will NIL money factor in to these big decisions of who will start for your football team? Let's kick it over to Lane Kiffin.
I guess time for the obligatory quarterback question. Looked like they both had a couple of good days these last 2 days. Just how are they progressing?
I mean, I know it sounds like a broken record. They do some things really well, and then at times they look young again. So, and everything in life is about what you just saw. So, not trying to say I'm smarter than other people, but, you take for granted what you have in life in all areas sometimes. And I kept telling our guys the last 2 years, especially last year, guys, these throws, ain't many people making these throws. And, you just used to every throw being, in there and not just miss. So, it takes some getting used to having new quarterbacks and losing a veteran that was, elite arm talent.
You were talking about with the QBs, Jackson and Luke, how they're both, some do some good things, bad things, and it seems like it's pretty close between the two. If they remain close, when the season was approaching, do you think the fact that Jackson was a big splash transfer portal addition, would that play any of a role into a tie-breaking vote for him to start, just to impact the transfer portal for the future? Just so if you wanted to get a QB in the future, a guy would be like, oh, if I go to Ole Miss, I'll actually play there,
Yeah, that's a fair question. That absolutely would have nothing to do with how we play players here. And we've got tons of examples over time. We don't care how many stars you are, where you're from, whether you're from the state, whether you're not. I mean, when I got here, I was dumb for playing the other quarterback. So, we don't look at anything that way. So it doesn't matter where he came from or whether he played or how many stars he is. Will have nothing to do with whether he plays. But fair question.
So how about it, Shane? I mean, I don't know the figures for Jackson Dart, but apparently he landed a huge deal. So how wild would it be if, Ole Miss, maybe the most expensive player on their team's riding the bench right out the gate,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's created pressure, man. It's created controversy already down there. I mean, you talk to any Ole Miss fan, for the most part, or even if they're not, they're just they follow the program enough. That's who you're assuming the quarterback will be.
Right.
You look what he was able to do with Matt last year, and you think, oh, he just plug and play. It's an easy fix, but you're not at the practice. How many times has he come out and said, these guys are young. They're making mistakes. And let me ask you, Mike, because when you listen to these coaches talk, sometimes they come out like the one we had yesterday down there at A&M. He was so damn pumped up about his football program. You feel good about that offense.
Right.
You'll hear Heupel in a little bit. He sounds good about his offense, but every time I hear Lane, he's bitching about something. And I don't know if is he setting us up? I mean, is he trying to lower the expectations on Ole Miss and this quarterback? Do you feel that, or am I just reading too much into it? Because first it's the NIL, then it's he's bitching about the transfer, even though he's got most of the transfers down there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to figure him out, and what is he saying to us about his football team? And I can't help but think that he's trying to get us to lower some expectations here.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Shane, because we call him the Portal King. What he really is, in my opinion, is the kind of lull you to sleep king, because he's got me 2 years in a row, and maybe I'm falling for it again, but he always sets the bar so low. I remember the COVID year, he's coming out here saying, I don't even know these kids' names. I don't know who they are because I wasn't allowed to interact with them. And then all of a sudden, he threw them out on the field, and my God, they had like the most dynamic offense in the yes. Remember, they scored about 50 points on an Alabama team that went and won the national championship. So
Yeah.
I think this is what Kiffin does. I think he downplays it, and that's not to say that these two quarterbacks are, Joe Burrow and Tua out there, but they might be a little bit better than old Kiffin's letting on, and I cannot wait to find out when they open up against their 4 or 5 cupcakes and see how many thousands of yards they have piled up after that stretch. You know what?
I don't know, Mike. I used to do this. We'd have pickup basketball games, I'd come in there and they'd be like, we'd be talking, be like, man, I'm so sore. I shouldn't have lifted so hard yesterday. I just kind of set them up so when I airball some 3 balls later, I could blame it on the bench press.